All right, for this video, I want to talk about basically. I think there is a knowing in the human race that we are all sort of here against our will. If you think, I mean, think about it, right? Because none of like literally none of us asked to be here in this world, right? None of us asked to be in this world, right? And a lot of us, right? If you look at like the reincarnation soul trap information. A lot of us are here against our will, and it's this big question. Like, did you? It's like ultimately, right? Did you even consent to being born to whatever family, whatever circumstances, whatever time period, right? It's like, did you even consent to it in the first place, right? And so that's one thing that I think shows a lot about the nature of this reality. But another thing too is, I mean, if you ask 99% of people, right, do you want to be here? Like, what do you mean here? Like, what do you want to be on Earth, right? If there were, and this leads to another thing, right, where it's like, if there was another dimension, right, like a fantasy realm, or another planet that you could go to, right? Would you prefer to be here on Earth? 99% of the answers would be no, because yet again, like there's this sense in this world that this world is designed for maximum misery because that generates the negative energy, the loosh, right? That these the entities who made this simulation, this realm, want to feed off of. Okay, so being here against our will and the fundamental like impulse of, if you're honest with yourself, you don't necessarily want to be here, or at least at the very beginning, you didn't want to be here necessarily. You might have been coerced or deceived, right? With like the, oh, you have to pay back karma and learn lessons. You might have been deceived, but you don't want to be here. And so that's telling of the nature of this realm, right? And there's another thing that I've talked about in a more recent video, which is the the search for an exit button, which a lot of it manifests in escapism, in drugs, right? You're doing drugs to get outside of your own mind, to escape the current situation, because the current situation, yet again, like this simulation, this realm, is designed for maximum misery, right? So you have that, but in its most extreme form, you also have the crash out response. Is what I called it in the previous video, the desire to crash out, and the exit button for this realm is death, right? So the desire to unalive. Some of it is entities telling you like, oh, the world would be better off without you. Like, there's like, that's one version of it, which is like the negative self-talk and the depression. Okay, that's one version of it, but another version is that your soul doesn't want to be here also, right? So you also have that, which is another thing that's very telling about this realm of like being here against our will and not what like the fundamental want to not be here. There is a subconscious sort of search for an exit button, right? How do like where's the power button? Right? Where's the video game menu to turn off the headset, to unplug, right? So you have that, but then there's also, and this might be like more personal to me, but there's also like a certain appeal to like isekai, right? If you look at like whenever I was in middle school, I used to watch like Sword Art Online, and I used to watch that and be like, oh my god, that'd be so cool if I was like stuck in the other world, but like playing with like swinging swords and being in like a fantasy realm, right? Wouldn't that be so cool to go to another realm? And I think that there is a certain appeal that going to another realm, going to another world has, especially if you present any other realm in contrast with this realm, right? The idea that it's like get out of jail free card. It's like a get out of jail free card, right? It's that, oh, okay, you get hit by a truck and then you get transported to another world where things are objectively better. There's stuff that exists there that it's like the sense of limitation that this world provides is non-existent, either because magic exists, because like fantasy stuff exists, because like there's like Pokemon or fucking like. And I think this is the reason why people watch TV shows, people watch movies, people are like fantasy and like TV like superpowers and superheroes because it offers and also books, right? It offers an escape from the limitations of this reality, right? The desire, yet again, this is linked with like the search for the exit button, like where's the exit screen, is the desire to escape the limitations of this reality, because the way people describe it in a lot of near death experiences is that this reality is very dense, very it's like moving in water. It's very dumbed down, slowed down. Everything's harder to do, right? And yet people excuse it as, oh, you're here to learn lessons and pay off karmic debt, and so some people will say, oh, but it's like the trials and tribulations is to get you closer to God or whatever, right? Which is a very obviously, not true, because it's very obvious that like because of like all the stuff, like the fact that you didn't were here against our will, the fact that you didn't consent to be here, the fact that you don't want to be here, the fact that there's an impulse to search for a way out of here, and also that there's that isekai sort of element of like I remember doing wishing this as a kid, like wishing to be able to go into another world, right? Wishing to be able to escape this world into another world where all of the stuff that matters here doesn't matter over there, and whatever MMORPG like fantasy world that has magic, whatever, right? That was always very appealing to me whenever I was a kid. It's like, oh man, like I wish I could do that instead of going to school and getting bullied by all the kids, right? It's like that thing, right? And it's very telling that like this reality is not created. It's not created by a loving God because of all the aforementioned reasons, right? The lack of consent, the lack of wanting to be here, the search for an exit button with no apparent escape, and also it's like the desire to be literally anywhere else but here is also another thing too, right? So yeah, I mean, I just wanted to sort of make a video just sort of conveying the I think like the first fact that it's like we're here against our will, and that should be a red flag. That this reality is not as people say it is. That it's not as religion says it is. The fact and how and it's crazy if you look at all the near death experiences through a different lens. With the lens of like, okay, this is a reincarnation trap. It's a loose farm. It's an energy farm, right? If you look at it from that perspective, right, there's a different conclusion that you come to, which is that all of the interactions with the quote unquote beings of light, with the spirit guides and all this other stuff, it feels very scammy, very deceptive, very forceful, right? And I can't emphasize enough like the scamminess of it, which is that we're convinced, deceived into thinking that we want to be here even though we don't. Right? To learn lessons, to develop our soul, to get closer to God, to learn how to love people, whatever bullshit reasons the new age offers as to why we're in the shithole. It's all bullshit. And it's the simplest answer to the way things are. Right? It's the Occam's razor. Well, like no mental gymnastics required. Is like, why does this reality suck so much? Because it's designed to be that way. Oh, okay, but like, how can a loving God coexist with like the shittiness of this? Okay, this reality wasn't created by a loving God. It's the simplest explanation and the most logical explanation for the way things are in this false reality, in this reincarnation trap, because that's exactly what it is, right? And it's very interesting. Yet again, it's more of a personal thing, but like it's very interesting, like the desire to go to another dimension, the desire to go to another world, right? It's like all of the problems that you encounter here would be completely erased if you just new identity, new persona, completely different world where it's like new possibilities. It's like it's like the thought experiment where it's like, oh, like if I kept all my current memories but went back to when I was 5 years old, what would happen, right? And another interesting thing, if you want to use a video game analogy, it's almost like, and I don't know if you've done this, but if you play a video game, then one of the things that will happen is that like if you have a bad run, if you fuck up early in whatever campaign or whatever mission that you're on, if you fuck up early, then like one of the first things that you do is like, oh, okay, I'm gonna like kill my player avatar to start from scratch, right? Because I messed up too early for the outcome to be good, right? And I feel like a lot of people have that feeling, which is that they're here without context, without permission, without consent. They don't want to be here. But then it's like there's early fuck ups, or there's things that they could have done better or whatever, and it's like they don't see, you know, no pun intended, light at the end of the tunnel. Because the tunnel of light, it's a lie, right? It's like people don't see light at the end of the tunnel, so people are looking for an exit button. A lot of it isn't, you know, it doesn't come from a place of like extreme. Some of it does come from a place of extreme emotion, but a lot of like that search for the exit button comes from a place of just logically, I don't want to be here, right? And another thing too, that's very interesting that I think it changes the priorities of like how you approach things in life, which is that I have personally I have made the or I've come to the conclusion rather that I would rather have a shortened lifespan doing stuff that I do want to do, right, and then crashing out rather than spending a lot. Because what happens is people say, oh, okay, if you're miserable now, then there's a trade off later, right? And I've seen comments on certain videos where it's like 5 years, like 5 years of happiness for 50 years of suffering, or 5 years of suffering for 50 years of happiness, right? It's like there's this invisible like trade off, which in the modern world doesn't really exist. It's a constant hamster wheel of like you need, especially with inflation. Especially, it's like what are you gonna do? You're gonna like save up to buy a house? Like that's ever gonna happen, right? And and I feel like a lot more, especially my generation, Gen Z, has come to the conclusion like I'd rather have a shortened lifespan and like and like chill and do what I want to do than like that just like work and pay rent. Oh, what a joyful existence it is to work and pay rent, student loans, work and pay rent, work and pay rent, student loans, and all the prices are increasing and I can't save money or like that type of stuff, right? Where a lot of people, it's like they'd rather stay at their parents' house and do nothing because yet again, no light at the end of the tunnel, right? And yet again, it's like this is like a very interesting, and I feel like this is reflective of something true in the human psyche, which is the desire to go into another world, right? Like that, yet again, like there's like a certain appeal to reading books about other realms, other fantasy worlds where things are different, where things aren't so limited, where you have options, right? Things aren't, and this is also linked with like an artificial sense of limitation that people have that's pushed primarily by like materialists, by scientists, right? Which is that, oh, like the only thing that exists is in 3 dimensions, right? Thinking inside the box, thinking inside the cube of Saturn, let's say, right? Everything exists in 3 dimensions, and that's it, right? There is no magic, there is no God, there is no spirit. None of that exists. It's just chemicals and Big Bang, and we evolved from monkeys, right? Which that's a part of this reality is the sense of limitation, and and a part of that desire to escape the limitation is going into other realms, which I do believe there are other realms where things are very different than the way they are down here. When I say down here, I mean down here like it's a hell realm basically, right down here, right? And so and there is this certain draw that humanity does have towards going into other worlds. Whether and this reminds me of like Avatar, right? If you look at like Avatar, like one of the things that was interesting about like when like it's the movie about like the blue people on like Pandora, right? And one of the interesting things is that the people who watch the movie for the first time, like it's like they experience like a depression because they had to go back to their office job after watching like the wonderful natural, like the connection with nature, the connection with other people, the connection with like the animals and stuff like that. And if you look at like Avatar, like the beginning of the movie, the guy lives essentially in the New World Order, right? He's like a war veteran. He's like in a wheelchair, and like everyone eats. Everyone looks like they eat bugs on Earth, right? It's like all that stuff. There is a fundamental like desire to exit this world and to go into another world, which it's been with me since I was young, right? Getting on like a SAO Sword Art Online, and then like Full Metal Alchemist. Like, oh my gosh, like alchemy exists, magic exists, right? It doesn't exist here, but it exists there, and that would be cool if I went there because at least at least there's power there, right? Instead of the limitations of this reality, which are hard code, which are it's designed to be limited in a certain way, right? And this was something that is also linked with um, another interesting thing that I've always felt was off about this reality, which is, well, how is it that I can think of something that doesn't exist, and think of something that doesn't exist, and yet it does exist, and there's like a gap between thoughts and reality that I've always felt shouldn't be there, right? The fact that you can imagine yourself teleporting or imagine yourself flying, and you can have like the will to do it, but it doesn't manifest, which is, I feel like that's unnatural, right? Think about like the lucid dream. When if you think of something, it manifests, and there's no limitation to how it manifests. I feel like that's the way things should be. People say, and people promote this idea also of a objective reality, right? This idea of an objective, external, unchallengeable, unchangeable reality with set rules, right? The biggest lie of the biggest lie that this matrix will try to push on you is the idea that reality is that prime reality, like the fundamental substance of reality, is a list of rules and regulations. When it's actually the opposite. It's a blank sheet of paper, or at least it should be a blank sheet of paper onto which anything can be created. But this reality is designed by a malevolent entity, a malevolent god, a malevolent false god, to keep you from that infinite potentiality, that prime reality, right? And yet again, it's very obvious that this reality is malevolent because none of us are here by consent. Like none of us are here. All of us are here against our will. That's a fact. None of us asked to be here. You might have said, "Oh, but you consented. You chose the life plan, right?" Like the whole life plan stuff. That a lot of like the NDEers talk about, like the near-death experiences, like what they talk about, like, "Oh, you chose a life plan and you consented to be here." Like, no, you were coerced and deceived by karmic debt, or you need to learn lessons, or you need to evolve your soul, or you have an important mission. You did it because you felt like you had to, not because you wanted to. And there's a difference. Because I believe outside of this matrix, and the way things should be, is that people do things because they want to, not because they have to. But in this hell realm, it's the reverse. It's people do things because they feel like they have to, not because they want to. And I think that is a shift in priorities, which is that doing things because you want to, not because you have to, even if it leads to a shortened lifespan, is always better, because a long lifespan spent doing stuff you don't want to do with in misery, that's dying a slow and painful death. We're all dying right now. We're all dying a death of the physical body right now. How long and how painful it is up to you, right? But yeah, that's the video.